Good morning, everybody. Good morning and welcome to our Veterans Day celebration here at Stockton University. My name is Ashley Jones. I'm a dependent. My father served in the Air Guard for about 20 years. And I'm the Assistant Director of Military and Veteran Success Center. I'm honored to be here with you today as we recognize our service members and remember the many sacrifices. This week, we will be educating the community on what it means to serve through a program called Veteran Photo Project, which is located by the library in F Wing, along with today's event. Each one of these programs was done to help our community better understand those who wear the uniform. So I'd like to kick it off with a Pledge of Allegiance. So could everybody rise? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And I'd like to welcome Linda Larkin to the stage to present the national anthem.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight, all the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Thank you so much, Linda. That was beautiful. Thank you. Please be seated. At this time, I'd like to recognize all of those among us who have served in the armed forces, to our active duty, military personnel, reservists, members of the National Guard, and all veterans. It's your service and sacrifice that has kept our nation free, safe and free. If you are able, please stand and be recognized. You too. Regardless of which branch you served in, whether it was in combat or peacetime, no matter what your job was or how many years you served, you deserve the recognition and thanks of a grateful nation. We can truly never thank you enough for all that has been done. So I'd like to present our next speaker, Luke Lalo. He has served in the Army National Guard as military police and current student majoring in health science. So I'd like to welcome Luke. You got this.
Good morning, everybody. Put some words together here. My name is Luke. I'm a junior health science major here at Stockton University, and I'm a veteran. I served 5 years in the military as a military police officer in the Army. My first mission was in Guantanamo Bay, and my last mission was in our nation's capital after the incident on January 6th. As the Veterans Day approaches, I feel it's important to express what it means to be a veteran, and furthermore, what it means to be a soldier, a Marine, sailor, or airman. Some join the military to escape their way of life. Some join for the financial and educational benefits, but most join to selflessly serve their country without question. We are a diverse group of professionals whose mission is to unburden those people of this great nation from the terrors that lie beyond our borders. For me, being a soldier means putting yourself second, doing whatever your country asks of you, without hesitation or complaint. Although, as some know, the lower enlisted, we like to complain a lot. We stand tall and embrace the worst and best parts of life. We are proud. I thought that once I left behind my life of being a soldier, I wouldn't find a reason to be proud anymore. But this school and the veteran community offered yet another chance for me to feel that sensation again. We are a family, and I feel at home here. Reintegrating back into society was no easy task. There is still more I need to learn. However, with the support of our Vet Center and the faculty who strives to understand and learn more about our military community, I have no doubt that I, as well as others, will continue to grow and find our place in society. On this Veterans Day, I ask you to take a moment to thank a veteran for all their sacrifices, for the restless days spent protecting this beautiful country and our way of life. Thank our soldiers who remain triumphant in all their battles, and the families of veterans who endure the hardships of their loved ones leaving. Thank you.
So how do I follow that? Thank you, Luke. For those that don't know me, my name is Dr. Michael Barony, and I am the director here at Stockton University's Military and Veteran Success Center. I am so grateful for you all that are able to attend, whether in person or online, to honor our veteran and service member students. There's a few populations I always like to talk about on Veterans Day that might get overlooked, but before I talk about them, I want to talk about our veteran and service members. Transitioning from whether it's active duty service, reserve service, or National Guard service can be very difficult. I know my transition into civilian life was not easy, as I only had 1 week to transition out of the military, and I actually had no idea what I was going to do when I got out of the Army. I honestly only went to school because I heard I had the GI Bill, and I had no plans on doing anything else, and maybe become a law enforcement officer because I had the GI Bill. I'm proud to say that it's people here at this institution, faculty and staff, that work with our veterans and service members that wouldn't let me fail, even though I tried to withdraw from college many times. And because of that, I was able to get my doctorate. I know I'm just one story of many, but I like to use myself as an example because I tell my students, if I can do it, you can definitely do it. Because when I had zero motivation to move forward, it was people within higher education that kept me moving forward. The second population I'd like to talk about is our National Guard and our Reserve population. They tend to get overlooked during Veterans Day ceremonies. However, they serve a very important part of our country's military contingency. If you haven't noticed, as Luke said, he ended his military time in doing duties down in our nation's capital. At my prior institution, I had a student that had to drop out of 6 consecutive semesters for his military service, whether it was COVID related, the BLM protest of 2020, or the Capitol riot. I had a student, year and a half, he had to take off of his schooling. It took him 3.5 years to complete a 2-year degree. He's very disheartened because his duty to his country set him back 1.5 years in his academic plan. And coming from active duty, I never had to worry about anything like this because military was my job 24/7, 365. However, our reserve students, our National Guard students, sometimes called up hours notice to days notice. And I want to say thank you to our faculty and staff that work with these students. I know it's not easy dealing with some of our students because sometimes they don't even get orders and they have to deploy right away, especially during COVID when orders came out 2-3 months past their report date. Our faculty and staff work tirelessly to make sure these students can reintegrate back into classes post-military service, whether that's current orders or end of military service. Also want to talk about our dependents, as Ashley spoke about. We service all military-affiliated students here. whether they are veterans, service members, or dependents. And those that might not know, dependents are a spouse or a child of a veteran service member. They don't have it as easy as some people think. For example, just this year alone, we've had 2 to 3 spouses that had to drop out because their spouse was either stationed overseas and they had to move overseas with them, or their spouses in the National Guard and got activated, so now they have to cover down on family duties, and they're unable to attend school anymore. When we think about Veterans Day, I want you to think about not only the veteran, but also those still serving and those families of those serving, because it's not as easy. As Ashley can attest to, being a military dependent, and I know speaking for my wife, she went to Ramapo University. The day she graduated, instead of going out with her friends, she got an airplane, flew down to Georgia. I picked her up at the airport. She dropped me off at base, and then I went into the field for training for 3 weeks. So that's just how military life is. And dependents help us stay strong, whether they're spouse or child. As you see on your program, the pictures there is our Faces of Stockton's Military Community Project. I'm very proud of those that partook in it because my goal is to show Stockton's population we are not the same. I obviously don't look like I was in the military anymore. I'm not in my same fighting shape as I was. And those pictures highlight how uniquely different we are, whether across major, race, gender, identity, you pick something. We are all different. And I'm very proud of those who partook. And afterwards, our reception is over there where the posters are. And if you haven't had a chance, you can go onto the Stockton website and look at the posters. Also, before I turn it over to our guest speaker, I want to acknowledge the military-affiliated faculty and staff here. They're a very underutilized population, especially helping our veterans and service members transitioning, because they already made the transition. My goal, I'm lucky enough, as the director, every day I get to help our students grow, succeed academically, and leave this institution, whether for a graduate degree, get into the workforce, or whatever they choose. But also, our military-affiliated faculty and staff are here to help. And I'm proud to say the Military and Veteran Success Center, by the end of this semester, we're creating an employee support group / affinity group to support our military-affiliated faculty and staff. Not just so we can start tracking the numbers of our faculty and staff that were in the military, but also we have services on campus that we bring in, whether it's VA-related sources, VA partners, or local resources. They can use too, because I can't tell you how many times, at least once a month, I have a faculty member or staff member that was in the military come up to me. How do I apply for my VA disability? How do I apply for my medical? Well, come on in when their reps are here, because we don't only just do service to students, but we also service our campus population. And being faculty and staff member, you're definitely part of that population. But this day is definitely not the same as Memorial Day. And this is to honor those who served, not those who gave their life. I know for me, it's a little harder because I did lose friends while my 2 deployments. So for me, Veterans Day is kind of a mixed bag. I definitely I celebrate my friends, but I can't help but think about those that I lost overseas. But if you have a chance, just say thank you to one of our veteran service member students, or if you know an employee that's military affiliated, say thank you. And without any further ado, I want to introduce our guest speaker. Retired Brigadier General Doug Satterfield. He retired in 2014 from the United States Army and entered the United States Army on active duty service as a private in 1974. 7 years later, he completed his enlisted service as a U.S. Infantry Staff Sergeant. His final duty was Deputy Commanding General of the Theater Engineer Command, where he was responsible for 3 engineer brigades composing over 12,000 soldiers. At the same time, he had dual responsibility as wartime engineer for the 8th U.S. Field Army in the Republic of Korea. Since 9/11, General Satterfield was deployed to combat on 3 combat tours as a combat engineer. During his 40 years of service, he commanded units at every echelon from platoon to theater level with duty in 22 foreign nations. Brigadier General Satterfield is married to Nancy Silvestri, I said it, and, and they have 4 children and 5 grandchildren. They live in Galloway with their Labrador Retriever, Bella. In September of 2021, the General published his first book, Our Longest Year in Iraq, which can be found on Amazon. And if you would like to see a printed copy, we have it here. This year, he published 55 Rules of a Good Life, which is also on Amazon. Doug is an American patriot, family man, Christian, citizen soldier, and advocate for United States veterans. Please welcome the General.
Thank you, Mike. By the way, how much did my mom pay you to read all that? Just curious. I'll also make a note. It's very dangerous to give an officer a mic for any length of time because they might actually talk too much. But I will say, Mike, you have a gift of gab. I will point that out. I'll also say that I'm surprised you weren't an officer because you actually had that. So very good. There's some other people I also want to thank, other than you folks being here. When it comes to the military on Veterans Day, it's people that are often overlooked. Obviously, the families are often overlooked, and that was covered. Thanks. But there's a lot of folks that also support us. Many of you out here right now support the military, even though you may not have any direct affiliation with them, but simply because you're an American patriot, or you're just a person who wants to support those things that we do that are good throughout the world. So thank you for those that support us. I know that oftentimes that is not an easy task, so thank you very much for that. One of the things Mike pointed out, and this is not about me, is I did join the Army as a private, and I did that after growing up in a very small town in the Deep South, and this is many years ago. And part of my growing up, I grew up around World War II veterans. And I got to talk a lot to these men. In this case, they were all men. And I got to listen to their stories about the war. I can be honest and tell you that it scared the crap out of me what they told me at the time, because it's absolutely amazing what these men did. Obviously, there were women there too, but I only spoke with men. And their stories today still scare me when I think about it. But my goal at the time was to be like them. And although I never was, I did get a chance once I got out of high school to join the Army. I walked into the recruiter's office and said, "Sign me up." And they were like, "Here, let me show you all the benefits." And I go, "I don't want to hear about it. All I want to do is join up, and I want you to ship me overseas." And that's exactly what they did. Vietnam was at its very end. I did not get a chance to go to Vietnam because it was essentially over at the end of '74. But I did my time. The other thing I did growing up, you may have seen it. There's a very old television series called Combat. And it's an old black and white. Later in it, they had color. But it was about, Vic Morrow was the star as a buck sergeant in the infantry, working their way across Germany, trying to defeat the Nazis. And I wanted to be something like that. And my proudest day in the Army, not my life, because I was getting married, in the Army was getting promoted to buck sergeant. I never forgot about that. And it was something that was, to this day, is something I remember. Even my promotion ultimately to brigadier general pales, frankly, in comparison to be promoted to buck sergeant. And the reason that is, and I want to make it very clear, is that that's when you start being in charge of other people. And when you're in charge of other people, your perspective in life changes. You're responsible for their life. You're not just responsible for getting them equipment or making them feel good. Your job is to actually make them stay alive on the battlefield. And let me tell you a little bit about some of the things that I learned in the military, and I'll pass it along to you. It was something that took me a long time. And I did not know. I call it the secrets, if you will, of how to do well. It's not just how to do well in the military, but how to do well in life. And the number one is the most difficult of all, and that is to tell the truth. At least don't lie. And now the reason I say that, most people think, well, that's a weird one. As a kid, I never did my homework. I admit it. And I was always in trouble. I admit it. Fortunately, I can say that now. At the time, it was not fun. And sometimes I shaded the truth. No, the dog ate my homework. And I still got a dog today, as you know. I love dogs. And if you tell the truth, it does a lot of stuff for you. It straightens out your mind, because today we're actually rewarded for not telling the truth. So I give you a personal challenge. It's not a test, but I give you a personal challenge. Only tell the truth for a week and see if you can do it. My bet is you cannot do it. It's that difficult to do. Now, my wife later on today will say, do you like my blue dress? And I'll say, I think the red one's nicer. That is the wrong answer, believe it or not, because that's shading the truth. Yeah, I don't like the blue dress. I try to say it nicely. And she appreciates that today, by the way. She goes, oh, okay, well, that makes sense. Because I'm going to tell her the truth. It is not always easy to do, but people will respect you a lot more if you do that. And if you've got faults, you might as well admit them right up front, because that's what I do. Believe me, I got a lot of faults. And in the military, one of them was I don't like to follow orders. Now you think, how could you spend 40 years in the military and not like to follow orders? In fact, I hated following orders. It held me back, frankly. That's okay. But obviously, at some point, people must have realized there's something, this guy's got something going on other than being a pain in the ass. And I was a long time. And in fact, General Petraeus, you may have heard of General Petraeus. I worked for him as a senior engineer in the 06-07 time frame in Iraq. And I had a reputation by that point in time, good and bad. That was my second combat tour there. And he said, Doug, I need you to do something for me. I go, okay, what you need, sir? I need you to build enough housing and support facilities for 30,000 people that are coming in, which was ultimately the surge. And what I want you to do is don't give me any gruff and try to get out of it, because I want you to do that. And I go, okay, sir, I can do it for you. And so I told him the truth, but his next question was, I know I can bring the troops here and all their equipment. I know I can fight them when they get here. What I don't know is, can I put them in wherever I want to put them throughout the country and have them have proper facilities to live in that are relatively safe? And I said, yes, sir, I can do that. Now, General Petraeus is not a stupid guy. And he goes, okay, Satterfield, how do you plan on doing that? So I told him, I took about 10 minutes of explanation, how it took us a week to put the analysis together to do that. And ultimately, the price tag would be very high. And I told him, he says, how much do you think it's going to cost? And I said, sir, I really have no idea. I think it's going to be about $100 million. And he goes, okay, go ahead and do it. The ultimate price at the end was $55 billion it took to house them. And it wasn't 30,000 that came over, it was 50,000. So I was a little misled on the numbers, but that's okay. And that's all right. So telling the truth, though, as soon as he knew it, he told me, hey, look, the numbers aren't 35 anymore, they're closer to 50. And I go, I got it, sir. But if you tell the truth, today, and if you're in Stockton, the most that's going to happen to you if you lie, obviously, is going to be you get embarrassed. But on the battlefield, you're going to die, or your friends are going to die, or they're going to be seriously injured. And that's why I'm so focused on telling the truth. You got to tell the truth, and you got to do it all the time. Another rule is be prepared. Now, I know you heard that. You probably were in the Boy Scouts or the Girl Scouts. I did that. My son's an Eagle Scout. I did it. I was in the Boy Scouts. But being prepared is pretty critical. And if you hear it at the university, being prepared is a great place. Being here is a great place to do that, to practice that. So if you make a mistake, you probably were not properly prepared for something. Like today, I was not quite on time talking to the Galloway Township Middle School, that's where I was right before here. It's just one of those days. I go, hey, look, I got held up in traffic. It was 5 cars, but to me, that's a lot of traffic here anyway. So, but they were a good bunch. But be prepared. And one of the things about being in the military is they do teach you to be prepared, but they don't call it be prepared. They say, wear your helmet, keep your rifle clean, and make sure you organize your rucksack. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Now, this guy was in the military police. You got to remember, I was an engineer originally and a combat engineer later. I had to have a chat a few times with military police because they were probably after me for some reason. By the way, I told you about the $55 billion that I spent. Anybody lawyers in here are studying ultimately to be a lawyer? Oh man, what a great crowd you got here today. Well, if you eventually become a lawyer and you read about in the military, they have their own publications. In it, I'm in there. And why I'm in there? Because I'm the only officer that spent that amount of money illegally in a combat zone. Yeah, that's true. I did do that. I spent it illegally because it was considered what they call an Anti-Deficiency Act violation. If you've never heard of it, you're lucky. Because what they do is, in the United States, Congress has to approve all the money that's spent in a war zone over any one project costing $1 million. And $55 billion is a couple bucks over that. We did not get proper approval. Now, General Petraeus, being the kind of guy he is, flew back to the States, went to Congress, and got approval. But they still put my name in the book. They don't put his name in it. They put my name in the book for spending that amount of money improperly. But I was the guy that was upfront about it, and they appreciated that very much because I was able to say, look, here's the deal. In peacetime, it takes to get a project approved over $1 million, typically takes 2 years. Today, in the peacetime military, I'd had 0 time to get approval. And it was either build them like you were in Sadr City. Sadr City in Baghdad was one of the most dangerous places in the country. I had to build barracks there, and from the date I was given the mission, how long did I tell you it took to build the barracks? 40 days to build 8 100-man, 100-person barracks. 40 days. You can't do that in the States. And they were under indirect fire and direct fire every single day until those barracks were built. And they were, of course, made out of concrete, so it made it much more difficult for them to be injured during that time. If I had gone the proper route, there are a lot of soldiers who would have lost their lives. And so I was happy to violate the law for that reason. And eventually they promoted me, so they must have thought I did something right. I was a colonel at the time, and by the way, colonels are those in the Army anyway. I don't know about the Air Force and the Navy, but they're the ones that are always trying to get things done because they're always trying to get promoted to general. And anyway, I had to live with a bunch of those guys and gals too. They were quite fun. By the way, I've enjoyed things being here. I've got one other little thing I want to tell you about, a little short story. In 1982, right around the time I was getting commissioned, I moved to State College, Pennsylvania, and of course you know that's Penn State University. And I was going there for an advanced degree in engineering, and my neighbor was a gentleman by the name of Judd Neidig, and he was a great guy. He was married at the time. I'm guessing he was probably in his late 80s. He was actually a doughboy in World War I. He was my neighbor, and as soon as I moved in, he comes over and he goes, "Welcome to the neighborhood. I understand you're a foot soldier like I used to be, and welcome to the neighborhood. We need to talk." And let me tell you, the first story he told me was in the Third Battle of Edna in France in 1917, the U.S. Army at the time was taking a real butt whooping from the Germans. And he told me about, and if you're a military person, you understand this, you never lose your rifle, right? You never get rid of it. You always have it. No matter what you do, you got to have your rifle. He'd lost his rifle. And can you imagine this? And of course, this is in a battle, but he says, it was not a problem. There were thousands laying around. So it gives you an idea of what combat was in 1917 in France, and it was a dirty, dirty business. I was very happy and honored to be associated with Judd Neidig, the foot soldier that I eventually became, and I was proud to do it. So thank you for being here very much. I hope you all have a wonderful day. I understand we have a little something else going on, and thank you for all you do to support us. Thank you.
Thank you, General. Well, before I close, I just want to remind everyone that we do have our project both online and over in F-Wing, Faces of Stockton Military Community. If you get a chance, please look it up. And the printed photos will be up there until the end of Friday. Again, thank you for attending. And I want to say thank you to all our veterans and service members. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, come on up. We'll talk after this, and and Susan, where are you? She took our photos, so I want to give her a round of applause. Again, before I let you go, I had one of my student workers call over there like, hey, I have this idea. How do I get it from point A to point B? And without her, I don't think we would have been here. So again, I gave her marching orders. She helped me to where it got to, and the project turned out way better than I ever thought it would be. So thank you so much. This concludes our event. Thank you for attending, and we look forward to seeing you over there in F-Wing with us. Thank you.